Staying with this theme, Pistorius will now start the process of reintegrating back in society after spending years in jail for the first time. Now, psychologist Sonto Masilela joins us for more on this. Sonto, a pleasure for you to join us right here on the program. From a psychologist's perspective, how challenging is the process of reintegrating someone like Oscar Pistorius back into society after 8 years in prison?
Thank you, Ntanta, for having me. Listening to everything that has been said, I am going to collaborate my answer with your question, just to educate people a bit when it comes to parole. So with regards to reintegrating offenders into the society, we just need to remember that if a person is a parolee, they have not necessarily been completely released from the DCS system. They are just being reintegrated back into society, more like if we have done rehabilitative work. Has the person changed? And we wouldn't know if they're still institutionalized. So this is just a way to find out, has the system done enough work with this individual and then take them back within society? And obviously, it's not clear to say that it will be easy or difficult, but we are expecting psychosocial challenges and obviously how the society reacts to the release of Oscar Pistorius. And I must say that I am talking from my experience when I was within the DCS system. I am currently not within the DCS system.
Sonto, some of the parole conditions for Oscar Pistorius have been publicized, such as the fact that he needs to go or undergo counseling and he cannot take alcohol as well. But when you're considering some of the undisclosed parole conditions for Pistorius, what psychological factors should be taken into account for a successful reintegration into society?
Okay, so generally speaking, when coming to parole conditions, they are specific to the merit of the crime and the individual. Because with regards to parole applications, their assessments are conducted by the DCS officials, social workers, psychologists as well, and other officials within the system. And they take into account the offender's behavior within their turnout in prison. And in this instance, if I were to guess, because I have never been in contact with Oscar Pistorius physically or have a session with him, I would say we need to take into account dynamic risk factors. Those are factors that could change, and also static risk factors, which are factors that will remain the same. And in Oscar Pistorius' case, the fact that he has committed a crime would then remain a static a risk factor. But then the ones that you have mentioned are the ones that could be considered as dynamic risk factors. Hence, I think that they were released. The ones that perhaps were kept confidential is just for his dignity, because at the end of the day, he is a human being. But I think the team that was working with him, including our national commissioner and his team, because all the reports go to him, have taken everything into consideration. So some of the things we might think of as well is employment. Substance use is of a great impact as well. Also the type of crime that was committed by him, with the different dynamics. Is this his only crime that he has ever committed? Are the previous crimes, did he have any delinquent behavior as a young boy? There are really many other factors we need to consider, and his family life, his psychiatric history as well. Family psychiatric history as well is to be taken into consideration. But I don't necessarily think that some of the things are for the society to worry about. I think what we should focus on when it comes to this particular case is the dynamic risk factors, which of course the responsibility lies with the offender.
So, Sonto, which brings me to my next point around the public. And, I mean, as you heard in those voxes that we played before this interview, there are strong opinions about Oscar Pistorius. How can society then support the rehabilitation of someone with such a high profile and a controversial past?
You know, when anybody commits a crime, especially this type of crime, a heinous crime, people tend to think he's an animal. We've heard, usually people would say such things, and not necessarily type it as this is an animalistic behavior. So what we need to remember is that when it comes to parole and reintegration to society, we need to remember that the system is trying to make the individual take responsibility of their crime, not only against the state, because usually it's the state that decides the sentencing and whatnot. But in this instance, when it comes to reintegration into society, it's to also show the offender that the crime is not committed not only against the state, but against the victim, the victim's family, and society as a whole. And we've seen this very prevalent with this case, how people are so opinionated about it. People that have known Reeva personally, as well as people that have never met her at all in their lives. So, yeah, that's my take when it comes to that.
So in your professional opinion, what impact might the barricading of Pistorius' uncle's house and the patrols by private, we believe, armed security have on Oscar's psychological well-being during this parole?
It's difficult to say specifically with Oscar because he was just released, right? So he has been on parole for a day, less than 48 hours. But if we were to assume this instance, I am not too sure. The barricading of the estate, was it to protect Oscar or was it to keep him out? So if you were to think of it as they were keeping him out, we may assume that he experienced stigma, because that is telling you that they did not want him to get in. So that's a message that's being told indirectly that we don't want you here. But if we are looking at it from a stance that they were trying to protect him, I think it's the stigma then being taken into consideration as well. Looking at how people have responded to the case and looking how people are responding to the parole, we do not know, are there going to be any adverse events as a result of this? Because I think some people may be angered from the release, the parole, and we don't know how they might act. So if we were to look at it from that stance, then we might say that Oscar then feels protected, that nothing is going to happen to him. But at the same time, we also need to remember that with psychological impact, it depends what somebody has been exposed to. So for a person that is from a poor socioeconomic background, they are not used to having bodyguards. But with Oscar's case, I mean, he is a person of high profile. There's a high chance that he has had previous bodyguards and security. So maybe this might make him even feel safer, because I don't think even if that he had back then, it was of this amount of personnel, of security.
Thanks to our guest and psychologist Sonto Masilela for really helping us explore the complexities just surrounding the parole of Oscar Pistorius and the psychological impact it might have on him as well.